They can jail us. They can shoot us. But we have a weapon more powerful than any in the whole arsenal of the British Empire, and that weapon is our refusal. Our refusal to bow to any order but our own, any institution but our own.
We have David Codrea from Examiner.com coming on. You guys probably saw him at the D.C. gun rights rally and the April 19th open carry rally. Those of you that go to my channel, this guy is wow. Wow, big time, wow. All I can say is you're not going to find anybody more educated on the Second Amendment than Mr. Codrea. He's a writer. He's an editor of Gun Rights Examiner, DC Gun Rights Examiner. You can find him at davidcodrea.com. And, of course, I have to dial out to him, folks, because sometimes we have trouble with the dial-in feature, and I did not want to have a problem getting this guest in. So if you guys will bear with me a moment, and we will get him on the line momentarily. We had some interesting switchboard stuff going on earlier. It wouldn't let me in, by the way. And so it said I was already dialed in, and I thought, oh, no, not with David Codrea coming on. Could this happen? So let's get him on the line. And, yeah, it's going to be a fantastic show, folks, absolutely. And I want to thank you guys for pouring in here on a Friday night. Yeah, you know, you guys could be out. Hey, David, this is Doc. Welcome to Hardtail News, special edition of Proof Negative. We're all thrilled to have you on.
Well, Doc, am I on already?
You are on. The thing is when I dial from the switchboard, you are live.
Okay, well, thank you very much for inviting me on. I appreciate the opportunity.
Well, we really appreciate having you. Our audience is just thrilled to have somebody like you on the show. And so tonight we're going to be covering everything Second Amendment, folks. And well, I'd let folks know you're editor and a regular featured writer at Examiner.com, is my understanding. You've also written a couple of books, and you spoke at the April 19th Open Carry Rally and the D.C. Second Amendment Rally, and I've used some clips from that, so my audience is real familiar with you. It's just fantastic, absolutely fantastic. And so I wanted to ask you right off the bat, because of all the work that you've done on behalf of the Second Amendment, what got you involved first in writing for the Examiner, and what was your motivation?
Okay, well, Examiner is almost like an afterthought. I've been writing for quite some time on the internet. I've been writing professionally in magazines for better than 10 years now. I started out in the late 90s for Guns and Ammo magazine, and then the editor over there moved on to take over Handguns, which was another publication by the same company, and then he got an opportunity to go over to Guns magazine, which is a totally different company altogether, and he invited me to come along, and so I am a field editor there, and I do their Rights Watch column, a monthly column for them. I also do book reviews and things like that. I've been writing on the internet for many, many years. We had one of the pioneering Second Amendment websites, some friends of mine, and it was called guntruths.com. We went on and created a national advertising campaign. We produced professional Second Amendment related ads that played on radio stations in all 50 states across the country through our Citizens of America effort. And so I've been in this game for a real long time. In terms of what actually got me started on this, it was almost like I had a threat made against my life. This is when I was living in Los Angeles, and the cop who was there with his partner to take the report was telling me there was really nothing they could do until the threat acted. And he said, "Sir, if I were you, I would carry a gun." And I looked at him and I go, "What?" You know, and I start coming up with every excuse in the world why they're professionals and they're the only ones who are really qualified to do something like that. And this is Southern California and I can't get a permit for it, and I would be breaking the law. And I just saw him look over at his partner and kind of roll his eyes. And all of a sudden, a little light clicked. And I said, you know what? I haven't really thought of it in these terms before, but I am going to have to take responsibility for myself, you know, and I've been in scraps before, don't get me wrong, but never anything with this potential for actual danger to it, where I started seriously considering violating the law and going armed in order to protect myself. So that was kind of a wake-up call for me, and I decided I'd better learn a little bit more about this. And so that was the beginning of a long path that I followed to get to where I am today.
Wow. I got to tell you that I've been through some similar big scrapes and scratches, but my dad raised us with guns. We did a lot of hunting when we were kids, and Pop goes moose hunting and elk hunting and things like that. And it was kind of I don't want to say that we depended on it for food, but we really did hunt enough to where it was a substantial amount of our food. So we lived in the country when I was young, so the fear of folks breaking into our homes and things like that didn't really become a problem until we moved to a little town called Broderick in Sacramento. And apparently that was the highest crime area in Sacramento. And then one night when we were there, they were actually, I guess, broke out the windows of the car and were ripping out our stereo. And my dad went out there to confront them. And, they had knives and things. And so had he not been armed, that could have been a terrible situation. Well, my dad sat us down and told us, hey, look, this might just be a 22, but I could have died confronting those folks, and so this is how you protect your family. And I never forgot that. And that kind of brings me to you wrote an article about an 80-year-old guy in Chicago who I guess had a burglar break-in, right? And he defended himself, and he's looking at charges, I guess, for defending himself there, and they wrote about Mayor Daley in a bit. Can you go into a bit about what is wrong with that and how it can get from where my dad can sit me down and tell me, hey, this is how you defend your families from harm, to an 80-year-old defenseless man defending himself and possibly going to jail?
Well, fortunately for him, he was not defenseless, and he was in the same situation I was in, where he had to choose between being judged by 12 or carried by 6, and fortunately for him, he made the correct choice. Now, this is in gun-free Chicago, and by gun-free, what I mean by that is that you cannot own a handgun in the city of Chicago unless you've had one and re-registered it every year since, I believe it's 1982, and paid the fee. And so he, of course, had not done that. There may have been an out for him legally if he had had a valid Illinois firearms owner identification card, which is another nightmare. But there is a provision in Illinois law, something that Barack Obama voted against, that says that if you do defend yourself, you will not be prosecuted. But it looks like he didn't do that either. He just had the gun, and coincidentally, he was also a Barack Obama supporter. So now what's happening is it looks like the city will not prosecute because, of course, it's a political hot potato. They haven't really made up their mind, and I understand there have been a couple other defensive gun uses in Chicago as well, and it's really making the hypocrisy of everything stand out among a community that is typically pretty hostile to gun ownership. And by this, I'm talking about the minority, urban, African-American community that through poor leadership, through falling for the Democrat socialist agenda, through opportunistic leaders in the community, have forgotten a lot of their roots from the black codes and the slave codes and things that would ensure that minorities were disarmed, through to all of the racist roots and results of gun control. They haven't really even been apprised of recent history. People like the Deacons for Defense, who protected people in the South from the Klan. And so there has been a traditional hostility against guns in the urban minority communities, and some people are starting to wake up, and they're starting to realize, you know what, if we don't have the means to defend ourselves, there's nothing that stops the bad guy. Chicago, it's illegal to have a gun. Chicago is murder capital USA. There's a disconnect there, and people are starting to see it, and they're starting to see through the lies. So the only problem with the Chicago incident is, again, I would like to see equal application of the law extended to everyone. That doesn't mean I want this guy prosecuted. That means if the same thing happens to me, I don't want to be prosecuted just because of who I am, just because I'm not 80 years old, just because I don't happen to look like him. I think as Americans, we are supposed to all be equal under the law.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. And interesting that you brought up the Deacons for Justice, because the rise of the new right was just on, and they, Chris Matthews is not one of my favorite journalists. I'm safe to say, but he talks about the relationship to guns and militia and everybody from the Tea Parties on down. That their motivation is racism, and that underlying is racism, and that they're trying to force their way the racist agenda with the barrels of guns. But